and welcome back to another episode of The Jake Williams Show. I am your host, Jake Williams, episode 41. This is going to be interesting because it finally happened. I've tried to avoid it as long as possible, but there's no more avoiding it. We're getting close to it. The 2020 election is right around the corner, so I'm making my long-awaited return to politics, and I'm sure you've all been waiting with bated breath for me to come back to the medium. Today I want to focus mostly on the Democratic debates from last week, both night one and night two, and kind of just give my analysis of who are the real winners, who are the losers. I mean, at this point, it's still a broad field. You know, there's still, 22, 23 candidates, and there was only 20 altogether. They had 10 each night, which, don't worry, if you thought that was exhausting and that was too long, that 4 hours across 2 nights with 10 candidates either, don't worry, that's going to end soon. You've already seen a good amount get weeded out here. And I'll give my assessment. Now, some of you might be thinking different than me. Some of you might think that certain candidates came out strong and did well, where I think they were kind of flat and lazy. And, I might surprise you. I think there's some out there that really look like presidential candidates and look like they really have a shot. And then there's some guys and girls in this case that look like they should just really reconsider what they're doing here. And I think, honestly, some of them don't understand the gravity of what they're doing, believe it or not. You would think that a lot of these guys would have an idea of what the greatest office in the land would entail, but I think in case of some of them, and I think you can already guess who, you can kind of tell that they don't realize the gravity of the situation. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But first, I want to talk about something that happened over the weekend that I wish in 2019 would not be surprising to me, but it's happened before. It's probably not going to stop anytime soon, just because where we are politically. I'm so disappointed with how we act in public to display our differences in political parties and political policy. Over the weekend in Portland, Oregon, Antifa clashed with some right-wing protesters, and it ended up being a really bad situation. There's no way to look at this. I don't care whose side you are on politically. This is not good. The minute we start throwing milkshakes at each other or start throwing fists at each other, that's when we've gone too far, and we've got to realize we cannot do that. And civil discourse is not something that should be pushed away to the side. And you have people arguing against that and saying, no, we have to be vigilant. We have to be out there on the front lines. We have to attack people and this, that, and the other thing. And when has that ever been a good idea? When has that ever been the right way to go about things in any aspect of life? Unless you are engaged in a physical war, there's never a valid reason for political violence, ever. In any scenario. Even if I don't even know where to begin with this. So what exactly what happened is the big question. Well, apparently there was a rally for the some would say far right, and I hate the term far right and far left, because much like anything in this kind of realm of political discourse, it gets thrown around too much, and it gets put on different people and labeled on different people. Now, Patriot Prayer, I don't know enough about them to say that they're far right, but they've had people that have been, white nationalists. There's been, Proud Boys members that have showed up to their rallies. I'm not saying they are white nationalists. I'm not saying they're Proud Boys. I'm not going to go down that whole rabbit hole. You guys know how I feel about the Proud Boys and all that stuff. But what I will say is having that kind of platform, and look, Proud Boys joined up and showed up at these things. They can't necessarily control that because from what I've read, they're kind of a free speech platform, and they're all about fighting for that. Now, in the past, they have had issues clashing with Antifa, which anybody has. It seems like if you are right or maybe even far right, you seem to have problems with Antifa. They don't like those kind of people and this, that, or the other thing. And there was a whole campaign back in January of this year with members of Patriot Prayer that had started a whole campaign about ripping off bandanas of Antifa demonstrators and taking pictures of them and kind of showing them who they are, sort of lightly doxing them, I guess. And that obviously led to an altercation. They've had histories of violence in the past, these Patriot Prayer kind of rallies. There's been all sorts of issues with it, especially in Portland. So this is actually surprisingly nothing new in Portland, this kind of issue with Patriot Prayer. And they've tried to, they've had members from Proud Boys members and Patriot Prayer members trying to infiltrate the Democratic Socialists of America. So there's always been tensions between Patriot Prayer and Antifa, and it kind of came to a head this past weekend. You had Antifa protesters yelling, I got to look it up because some of them are who streets, our streets, Proud Boy scum off our streets. They threw eggs. They were throwing water bottles, even at cops. So it got completely out of hand. And the milkshaking incidents that I've seen, and if you're not familiar with what milkshaking is, it's this weird thing that we do now in politics where if there's hit my mic stand, if there's people that you don't agree with or you don't like politically, you especially I think it's more popular in Europe, you run up and throw a milkshake on someone. It sounds funny on paper, and it kind of is funny when you see it, but I also cannot justify that because that's still wrong. You still cannot physically get in any sort of altercation with someone. It's just not right. You got to keep your hands to yourself. Even if, say whatever you want, but it doesn't, the First Amendment does not protect a violent act. So you can say whatever you want, you can do whatever you want and protest peacefully, but the minute you start attacking someone, it's not going to be good. And I'm not trying to say that it's all Antifa's fault. There was probably Patriot Prayer people doing the same thing. It was a huge skirmish. And this is what happens when you get people with clashing ideologies. It bothers me. And yes, this has been around for a long time, but it bothers me that nobody wants to step up and say, hey, maybe we should stop being so goddamn stupid. Maybe if we want people to take us seriously, we don't hurt other people. And if you're Antifa, if you're someone that doesn't like Patriot Prayer or the Proud Boys, I'm one of them that doesn't like the Proud Boys, at least. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't like Patriot Prayer. If you don't like them, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Let them say what they want to say and let people make decisions for themselves. When they hear them say some of the things that they say or spout off the things that they say, you're not going to just throw a milkshake on them or trying to assault them anyway, because then the narrative shifts to you. And the narrative shifts on you being a total jackass and hurting people. And I also heard that some of the milkshakes that were thrown at this had some sort of mixing cement in it. What are we doing? What are you doing? This is where we are now. This is the level of stupidity we have reached when it comes to politics in this country. And I'm not going to just say it's all, Donald Trump's fault, or I'm not going to throw that kind of cast that shadow or say those kind of things. But what I am going to say is we are a resilient country. We will figure this out. We will get past this. We will move forward. And the only way to do that is accept, look, this is not the way to approach these things. Opposing ideas, imposing beliefs. This is not how you should treat some other people. This is not how you should react to things. If you're really that upset, instead of throwing milkshakes at people, instead of causing all sorts of trouble, and again, I can't stress this enough, I'm not saying that the Patriot Prayer people are innocent. I guarantee you they're not innocent. So their side also has to listen to this and understand, if you don't like the way that things are, vote. Get out there and vote and do things positively in your community and make it easier for other. Go campaigning. Go canvassing, make it easier to vote and change these things, because that's the only way that these things are going to change. Being violent and and attacking the police and attacking people that you don't like, or people you don't want in your streets or whatever, that's not going to work. Because when you have a society in a country like ours that has so much freedom, that's not going to work, because people don't like to be told what they're going to do, and they're going to vote and they're going to act the way they do. And this is why you need to vote, is what I meant to say there. And it bothers me, and it's frustrating to see. I don't know anything about the guy. I think it's Andy Nago, I think is his name. I could be pronouncing it wrong. And he works apparently for a conservative website. I don't know what it is. I don't care what that website is. Point is this: you cannot attack people like that. Think before you do these things. Think and be smart. There are much more efficient and smarter ways to change people's minds politically, and throwing milkshakes at them, throwing water bottles, throwing eggs, attacking them, chanting things at them, it's just not going to work. It's just not going to work. You have a right to peaceful protest, not a right to be a jackass and attack people. And, the guys, the Antifa guys that went to jail, I'm glad they went to jail. You should go to jail if you act that way. It's just unacceptable. All right, so that's out of the way. So now we're going to talk about things that are a little bit more fun. We're going to talk about the Democratic debates, parts 1 and 2. I know this is coming late, but I wanted to, get everybody's thoughts on it, have it out there for a little while, let it sit, let it simmer, and then I can kind of give my judgments and my beliefs on what went down. So let's talk about it. Night 1 was an interesting night because you had the obvious Elizabeth Warren, you had Julian Castro, Bill de Blasio, Beto O'Rourke, Amy Klobuchar, Tim Ryan, John Delaney, Cory Booker, Tulsi Gabbard, Jay Inslee, I think is the last one I could see on here. I'm trying to remember all of them, so I had to kind of look at a list because, we have so many, such a big field for the Democrats. So I think we got to go first with the losers, because I think this is more fun to talk about the people that I think really stunk up the place. Number 1, Beto O'Rourke. Now, Beto is a guy who I thought was an interesting character when he was running against Ted Cruz back in November. I was surprised Ted Cruz won, honestly. I didn't live in that district. I don't live in Texas. So, again, I could see why Ted Cruz won, but I was a little bit surprised because Ted Cruz got so dominated in the presidential election in 2016. He was not super well liked nationally, but maybe, locally in Texas that happens. I've seen that happen, especially with Steve King in Iowa, where I live. I'm not a huge fan of him, but that district loves him, and I think a lot of people think he's crazy and racist, but, that district likes him, and they don't necessarily think that, so it is what it is. But I think that was the problem. I think Beto losing to Ted Cruz somehow, which you would think would kind of hurt his confidence and kind of not make him want to do politics anymore, completely changed it. It gave him some sort of huge ego boost that I do not understand, especially the fact that he announced he was running for president on Vanity Fair, says that he felt like he was born to do this. And he goes on I think his whole mentality was like, I'm just going to do my version of what Barack Obama did in 2008 to get his, election and win and change everything. Beto doesn't talk about anything, it seems like. When he talks, and I'll talk about this too with how I feel about Mayor Pete, although I think Mayor Pete actually had a really good showing in night 2, but we'll get to that. Beto, on the other hand, I feel like he didn't understand what he was doing. And I talked about that at the top. There are some people in this race right now that I think don't understand the huge responsibility, the biggest responsibility you could have in the country, being the president of the United States. And I think I thought it was going to be a cakewalk and he could just coat on his popularity. When he talks, he doesn't say anything. He doesn't have anything in forms of policy. And he just thinks that he can win on charisma. Now, I understand that we had a president do that with Donald Trump, but at least when Trump was going around in his rallies and all this stuff in his campaign, he was at least trying to propose something to the working class, and that's how he won. Whereas Beto, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what he thinks he can try and do. Um, I don't know. He has guys like, Julian Castro saying he didn't do his homework on immigration. When you lose to Bill de Blasio in a debate, it says a lot about you. And I'll go further into good old Bill de Blasio, who, despite how I feel about him, I think had a good night. But Beto, he looked like he was a scared child and wasn't quite sure of what was going on. And I think it's too late, It's too, and the fact that he dodged a question about tax and his 70% wealth tax. Also, he has that just stupid war tax that he tried to roll out there. He has those, but the wealth tax, when he was asked about it, he started speaking in Spanish. Like that's going to justify anything. Just because it was on Telemundo, maybe, that he could get away with it. I think he had a terrible showing, and I think this is the beginning of the end. I think Beto is going to be one of those guys that's going to just drop off, and he should. He should stop wasting people's time, and I'm really upset for the people that, maybe supported his campaign, because that was a waste of money on your part, and I guess you should be smarter. But he's fallen off. He's out. He's a loser. He's not a contender. You know what? We're going to call it this way: contenders and pretenders, and he is a pretender for sure. Another one that I think that, and look, this is also very opinionated, hence, loud and opinionated. That's where the show is on. So this is very opinionated, and I am someone who doesn't like Cory Booker either. I think Cory Booker is someone who had a somewhat decent performance, but I think he is not ready to hold office, the highest office, I should say. And the problem with Cory Booker, in my opinion, is he's too much. He's like Beto. He's a charlatan. He's out there to get all, like, I'll go right back to it. And this is something that right-wing media has been playing or poking at him with, and it's going to continue to plague him, just like it's going to plague Elizabeth Warren with the Pocahontas stuff. His I am Spartacus moment, good God. Good God. Now, that being said, I think he did say some things worth of value when he was talking about gun control and how we need to talk about how we change the narrative on that. I think one of them is not calling it gun control, but whatever. When he said it was repugnant, calling private prisons repugnant and gun violence, talk about those things. I like that, but this is the problem when you have this field of so many Democrats. It's going to feel like he's just going to repeat what Bernie is going to say, and he definitely feels like he's going to say what Elizabeth Warren's going to say. And those are some things you have to deal with. But my favorite quote of the night that he had, when talking about gun violence and how we deal with it and things that we need to do, he says, quote, "I'm tired of hearing people, all they have to offer is thoughts and prayers. And my faith without works is dead." 100% agree with that. But the reason I think that I don't necessarily think he's a loser or a pretender. I think he's going to lose out. I don't think he's going to make it. Even when he announced, I didn't think Cory Booker had a chance. But I think he had some solid points, and I think he had a decent showing. But I just don't think that he had enough there. And another one. Let's go back to the bigger losers here, the pretenders. Tim Ryan. He looked, how I said Beto looked scared? He looked like a deer in the headlights. My God. Especially when the biggest one that I want to draw back, because Tulsi Gabbard is actually someone that I'm interested in. I like her as a candidate. And when he got into it with her about 9/11, I think that was the dagger. When he goes out and he says, Gabbard had to remind him, because she was in the military, that it was the Taliban who attacked the U.S. in 9/11. Or it wasn't the Taliban, it was Al-Qaeda. And that opened up a whole can of worms, because his whole thing about that was, how do we deal with what do we say about the Middle East and all these things? We're currently engaged in all this stuff. And he's like, just, hold firm. We're working on it. To which, Tulsi responded with, that's a slap in the face to families and, soldiers that are in the Middle East. We're saying you want to end these wars, but yet you want to just stay in there and wait and hang out. That's stupid. It's a terrible, terrible policy. That's dumb. We have no reason to be in the Middle East. And this whole thing with Iran is a great example of our continued unnecessary, unneeded conflict with the Middle East. So Tim Ryan, I think that he's going to fall off. He had a terrible night. Amy Klobuchar, I want to talk about her because what is she? Why is she running? She's nothing. Nothing. That's my response to Amy Klobuchar. So when I'm looking at, when I say that these are losers, these are the people I clearly think should just drop out and give up. Another one, John Delaney. I don't even know. John Delaney, he doesn't have this personality that you want. And to be honest, if you want to make it in the Democratic primary for 2020, he is not left enough. He's too center left. He's still for, I think he still fights for corporate America. And I still think he fights for things that the left really doesn't want to fight for anymore. And they want to push farther away from that. And I think John Delaney is still too much of one of those corporate Democrats that I don't think has a chance either. So if I'm looking at him, Tim Ryan, I think, is eliminated. John Delaney's eliminated. Amy Klobuchar, she's eliminated. Beto O'Rourke is definitely gone. So right there, I've just taken out 4 people from the race. I don't think Cory Booker's out. I still think he'll keep fighting and he'll stay in there for a while. But I just don't see him having a chance. I'll say I respect Jay Inslee because he is someone that's all about his big issue is climate change. That's what he wants. That's his big push. But the problem is he didn't get a lot to talk about with it, and it kind of hurt him. I don't see him making it, but I could see him as a viable VP at some point. So, we never know. So let's talk about the winners of the first night of the debates. Obviously, this is the one that was set up to win. She was the setup for the most opportunity. Elizabeth Warren, I think she continues to show to me that she has spent enough time in the political system that she is ready to be a leader. And I was never somebody that was big on Elizabeth Warren for a long time. But the more I've seen of her and the more she talks, the more I'm starting to really come around to Elizabeth Warren. And, some people could argue that she's just taking ideas from Bernie. If anything, that's a good thing to me because that's showing that what Bernie is trying to stand for, what Bernie wants is affecting this party. And I think, obviously if someone is more conservative or right-wing, they're going to disagree with me. But I think this is a push to the right direction. Because we're talking about student loan debt. We are talking about private prisons. We are talking about a smart way to talk about with firearms. And all these things, I think, are a push in the right direction. Because we need to be talking about healthcare. We need to be talking about private prisons because the way that we have had them, these systems in our country are just not working right. I mean, private prisons are, to me, the biggest problem with our criminal justice system. And that's this. If we want to talk about things that I want out of a candidate, things that really drive what I want to vote for, it's, education reform. We've got to do better with our public schools and managing our education, all that stuff. And it's not going to work with people like Betsy DeVos who have no idea what they're doing. But that's a different podcast for a different day. And I also want someone that's all about prison reform because private prisons are killing the justice system, and I don't think we do enough with prisoners to rehabilitate them. I think the whole purpose of prison should have 2 factors. It should be punishment for your crimes, but it also should be rehabilitation so you don't have those crimes again. and don't be a repeat offender and put you back into the system. If they come back into the system, it is failing. And I think the more that she talks about this stuff and the more she talks about getting rid of private prisons and taking care of those things, I like her. And I think she had a great a night. I think, granted, she was kind of set up to have that night because I really think the Democrat Party is really pushing for her to be the nominee. And, you could put the tinfoil hat on me and say that's some sort of weird conspiracy theory, but I think it's true. I think she was put in a great position. I mean, when you look at the field that she was competing against, she had a great chance to really lay the smack down. Her best quote, I think, was when she was asked about healthcare and things like that. She says, "I am in this fight because I believe that we can make our government, we can make our economy, we can make our country work not just for those at the top. We can make it work for everyone. And I promise you this, I will fight for you as hard as I fight for my own family." It's a strong quote. It's a great quote. And it's a very presidential quote. And I really think she came out very strong. And I think Elizabeth Warren has a legitimate shot in the primaries. And she's doing what Hillary Clinton didn't do. And she is slamming the pavement. She's going out to these smaller towns. She's really going after Iowa. And she's doing the best she can. She's working her ass off. And I can't help but respect that. And she might just, steal a vote from me come 2020. We never, you never know. Another one that kind of surprised me, kind of came out of nowhere, for me anyway. And I like to think I'm pretty informed on this stuff, but this guy kind of came out of nowhere. Julian Castro from Texas had a very, very strong approach to immigration because of his background. And I think he did a great job. And he came out very strong, and knowing that he probably didn't have the footing as the other candidates may have had, where you think what Beto could have done, I think this guy did it. And he actually probably used his Spanish in a better way here. Oh, man. Another one that I haven't talked about, another candidate that I really like, that I think had a slow start, but I think really caught her stride later in the debate, Tulsi Gabbard. Obviously, her one issue is foreign policy, and her approach to foreign policy is exactly what I want. If you didn't hear me earlier, trashing on what was his name? Tim Ryan. That's what I was going to say. Tim Daly. That would have been embarrassing. But she's the one who corrected Tim Ryan, and she had that quote to him, which she said, "Is that what you would tell the parents of those 2 soldiers who were just killed in Afghanistan? Well, we should have just been engaged, or we have to." Good Lord, I cannot read. "Well, we just have to be engaged. As a soldier, I will tell you that answer is unacceptable." And I think she kind of leans on it heavily, her military service. But I think when it comes to foreign policy, it's the right way to go because that's her main issue, and she's anti-war. She doesn't want this anymore. She wants us to get out of these situations. And I think just her approach on foreign policy alone is enough to make me interested in her and want to vote for her. I think she had a decent showing. Could have been better, a little bit slow. I think she kind of dodged the question about her stances with LGBTQ. She kind of just used it as an equal pay thing with her military and stuff like that. Like she kind of dodged some questions early on, but she really caught fire later. And I think she just has to stay aggressive and keep with her her foreign policy, but be more aggressive and be more out there. And if somebody asks her again about her stances on LGBTQ, she's just got to face it head on. And maybe somebody might not like it, but she definitely needs to address it, and that way, if she can address it, she can move forward. And maybe an issue apology, because we know how much the left loves apologies. All right, so let's talk about night number 2. So who do we got on night number 2? We got Joe Biden. We got Bernie Sanders. We got Kamala Harris. We got Mayor Pete Buttigieg. We've got, all of the other ones. Let's look at the list here to make sure we have the right ones. We also had Andrew Yang, my boy, Yang Gang, trying to give me $1,000 a month. And then Marianne Williamson. Those are all of them, but these are the ones that kind of stood out, I think. If we're looking at winners, absolutely Kamala Harris dominated last night. That night. It wasn't last night when I recorded this, but she dominated. She came out strong. She used her tactics and her abilities as a prosecutor to really, drive it home that, this was her night. And I think it said that her campaign got like $2 million after Thursday night's performance. Unbelievable. She went after everybody. She attacked Trump. She attacked Biden on the busing issues, and which is funny because Biden could have come back to her because her history as a prosecutor is pretty shady. She's done some stuff where she's definitely, for truancy even, was pulling kids away from their families, and it didn't discriminate. Even if you were homeless, they were ruining things like that. So she obviously hasn't had a perfect history, but she definitely came out strong and had an amazing performance, and I was kind of taken aback by it. I don't necessarily think that, I don't know. If you stack the deck against her, say like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or other people, I just don't see her winning. But I think she had a very good showing and a good start, and she dominated that night. Had all those donations. She was kind of running through everybody's mind after the debate. I think to me the biggest loser of the night, it was not Andrew Yang. I think Andrew Yang talked 2 minutes of the whole 2-hour debates, and I think there's something about it. He's saying he had an issue with his mic, but I don't know. There's got to be something that he's got. If he wants to survive this, he's got to be more proactive and more aggressive. Much like what I said about Tulsi, he needs to be out there and more aggressive and come at them stronger. Maybe his mic was cut, and I feel like it had to be because you have 10 people talking on a stage. You have to cut someone's mic at some point. So, I just don't see that he had a good showing. But I think the ultimate loser of the night was absolutely Joe Biden. I am so sick and tired of Joe Biden. Go home, Joe. It's over. You had your chance. You missed it. You had the best opportunity in 2016 to run after Obama, with all the stuff with Obama. And I know that his kid died and all those things happened, and it's totally understandable why he didn't run. But he missed the boat, man. He does not have the charisma and ability to compete with Donald Trump. It's not going to happen. There's no way. He's been questioned about his past, and he just kind of brushes it off. He has that thing with Cory Booker, with the infighting there. Kamala Harris comes at him. He doesn't really have a good response. It's just nothing. I mean, his big thing when they asked, what would be the first thing you would do when sworn into office? Well, the first thing I would do is make sure we defeat Donald Trump. What? He doesn't even look like he's trying. This is the biggest problem. I think Joe already in his mind thinks he has the nomination, has no problem to not even care about these other candidates, doesn't even want to mention them. And I think he doesn't understand that he's so old school politics that he does not deserve to be on this stage and does not deserve to be competing with these people. His biggest claim to fame is, I was with Obama. But don't worry, if you vote for Joe Biden, he'll cure cancer. It's stupid. It's idiotic. And the fact that this 80-plus-year-old man runs like he's in his early 30s with a level of arrogance is just moronic. And I don't mean by energy at all that he runs in his 30s. The dude looks like he's asleep half the time. I think he is. I think this is more of an argument for him. And you know what? I love Bernie, but Bernie didn't really look that great in this debate. It's time that these old geezers go to the retirement home and let the younger people go and run. And I say that even though I say Elizabeth Warren at 69 is probably the best candidate right now, but still, it's ridiculous. Another loser from night two, Marianne Williamson. What the hell was she talking about half the time? This is an author and self-help guru. What? What is she talking about? It's amazing. And I get her thing when she said she was sworn into office, she'd call the Prime Minister of New Zealand? For what? To flex on her? I don't know. I don't know what is up with her. Her quote that got me to Mr. President, if you're listening, I want you to hear me, please. You have harnessed fear for political purposes, and only love can cast that out. She's not wrong, but I don't believe she's the one that's going to be, leading the charge. Unbelievable. And, like I said, I think Mayor Pete has a great response where he said that the right doesn't, I'm paraphrasing, but when he said the right doesn't have a say or control the religion in this country and Christianity. I thought that was great. I thought, his response about, depends who he called when he's sworn into office. And he's like, depends on who I pissed off. Things like that are good. And I think Buttigieg had a pretty decent showing. But Buttigieg has gotten better. And for a while, I kind of thrown him in the same category as Beto, where there's someone that just talks and talks, and they're just it's just a popularity contest. And it's not, what he can do policy-wise. But I don't necessarily think that's true anymore. I think Buttigieg is actually trying to roll out some policies and actually really coming at this. He has questionable things with what he's done with South Bend and how he's run that. It's very interesting going forward how we're going to talk about that. But we'll see. We will see. This has been a wild run, and this is the first one. There's still a lot more to go between now and November 2020. And who knows who's going to get the nomination, who's going to come out on top. But I think unabashedly, Kamala Harris dominated the debates and really got all the attention on her. Bernie, didn't really. He was just all talking points. And that's bothered me because usually Bernie's very great at these. Usually Bernie's very on top of his game. And this is what really got him over in 2016 and why people really liked him was his ability to control these debates and control narratives. But just didn't seem to have it this one. And we'll see what happens. It doesn't always shake out the same way it was. I mean, you could look at any real, debate the first time out and say like Obama versus Mitt Romney did not shake out the way people anticipated. And then Obama came back and really showed why he was president and showed his charisma and his ability to win debates and win people over. So who knows what's going to happen? This is the thing is I've slowly become this giant political nerd since the 2016 election. As much as I talk about how much I hate Donald Trump and hate the things that he does, I'll give him credit. He has made me more politically conscious and it made me more of a political nerd. So I'll give him credit for that. I mean, this same situation, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have cared. Probably wouldn't have really went on my radar. But now it is. And I'm pretty grateful for that. So thanks, Trump, I guess. And this has been another episode of The Jake Williams Show, all about the Democratic debates. What did you guys think about it? I'm sure you're probably done talking about it at this point. But, if you really want to share your opinion, let me know. Who do you think were the biggest winners? Who do you think was the biggest losers? Who, if it's changed, who do you think is going to be the one you're going to vote for? Are you going to re-elect Trump? I don't know. Tell me. I want to know what you guys think. That's kind of the fun of this this experience and the fun of this show. And follow Loud and Opinionated on Twitter at Loud Opinionated. You can also give us a like on Facebook, Loud and Opinionated as well. Listen to the other shows that we do here at Loud and Opinionated. Loud Sports, Party Chat, all that fun stuff. And you can also catch me guesting on another podcast with the Box Office Bros, Chance and Corey Osborne. Corey Osborne and Chance Oliver. They have the Box Office Bros. It was a really fun podcast. We talked about a lot of different things, and I gotta say, it was one of the most fun I've had doing a show and being a guest. They're actually going to be back to do my show, so they will be on the Jake Williams Show for the next episode. Until then, be loud and be proud.